We do need to move on to the main story of the day, which is news, if we can call it that, which says that a man caught on tape a few years ago boasting that he could sexually assault women has in fact sexually assaulted a woman. And perhaps several, judging from the number of alleged victims who gave evidence in this particular case. Now, this was a defamation case, John, a civil suit, not a criminal action. And it was brought by a journalist who said he had attacked her years ago. And she claims he had defamed her when he then sort of belittled the accusations and criticised her. So what's the court decided?
Yeah, so this is a writer called E Jean Carroll. She said that Donald Trump had sexually assaulted her in a department store in New York in the 1990s. She wrote this in a book. Then Donald Trump said that she'd made the whole thing up, that she was a liar, he'd never even ever met her. So then she took him to court for defamation, saying that by saying that she was a liar, that he'd effectively trashed her reputation. And the court in New York's found in her favour, ordered him to pay her $5 million in damages, which is around £4 million. And this is just the latest kind of court defeat for Donald Trump. Remember, a few weeks ago, there was that court case also in New York about whether he'd made payments to Stormy Daniels, the porn star. So that one's also going through the courts. And yeah, Donald Trump is not in a great place, but the problem with the Republican Party in the US seems to be that whatever he does, it seems to be fine for his supporters. And he seems able to build this grievance narrative. So yesterday, as soon as his court verdict came out, he was tweeting that this was the greatest witch hunt of all time, that it was disgrace, that he still had no idea who E Jean Carroll was, that this was a political witch hunt. And this does seem to kind of rally Trump supporters who do seem to buy this whole thing, that this is all a conspiracy against their hero, Donald Trump, that he's been badly treated by the American establishment. And it doesn't seem like it's going to have a massive impact on his bid to be the next American president. You'd think with most people, they would think, oh, hang on a minute, I feel so much shame that I won't be putting myself forward. Not that we know that, or we know that Boris Johnson feel any shame at all.
John.
Very different characters, clearly. And we know that in the 2016 US presidency race, that Donald Trump actually said that he could go out and shoot someone on Fifth Avenue in New York and it wouldn't cost him any votes. And quite depressingly, that does seem to be the case, that it doesn't seem to be doing anything to halt his bandwagon as he tries to make a comeback to become the US president.
Yeah, and as Strauss says there, he's quoting that thing, I could shoot someone on Fifth Avenue and it wouldn't matter. And as another viewer's just said there, he should be in prison. Now, the fact is, I think pretty much, is that the reason that E Jean Carroll put this in a book around the time of Me Too, and there's lots of other allegations about people coming out, is perhaps because she didn't want to go to the police. It was a long time ago, and there may be that there's not an awful lot of evidence left of it knocking around anyway now. People that would have witnessed or seen or anything heard about it. But also, the criminal standard of proof in the States, same as here, is higher than the civil standard of proof. So she had more chance of winning the defamation case than she would have done of actually getting him in jail. Doesn't mean that it didn't happen. It just means that maybe someone's made a judgment. Helen says, I thought us Brits were mad with Boris Johnson. You Americans are insane. A man like that for president, for God's sake. Now, she wasn't raped, maybe, but she was sexually assaulted, the court has found. And definitely she was denigrated afterwards when she decided to speak about it. But none of this is particularly surprising because we know from that Access Hollywood tape that was leaked in the run-up to Trump's first run to the White House, that that's just the sort of guy he was, that he thought you could just grab a woman and do what you liked. And now, despite this, some of our viewers have pointed out, despite the riots in the Capitol, despite losing tax cases against his companies, despite facing more legal cases, Trump's still the most popular Republican in the US to take on Joe Biden in 2 years' time at the next US general election. Now, John, is it possible anyone could explain why American Republicans, conservatives who believe very fervently in the rule of law and in Christian scripture, why are they so keen on having a criminal sex pig in the White House?
Well, I mean, I I struggle to be able to explain that when you put it that way. I mean, who knows? There seems to be some people on the Republican side who still seem to think that Donald Trump is an election winner. I'm not sure if many people in those swing states where the kind of race will be decided when it actually gets to voters, when they get to choose, do you want a Republican or do you want a Democrat in the White House? I just think that I struggle to see how many of those people will actually want to put their cross next to, or their stamp on their American voting machines next to Donald Trump's name. But we did have this all over again, as you say, in 2016 with that Access Hollywood tape, and he still managed to get into the White House. I don't know. You speak to Republicans, or you see what Republicans say in the media. Mike Pence, who was Trump's vice president in the first Trump presidency, hopefully the last Trump presidency, well, he said that he still thinks the most important thing to Americans aren't issues like this about morals and what Donald Trump may or may not have done with women. He thinks the most important thing to them is what's in their wallet and how the economy's doing. I'm just not sure that Donald Trump's even got a clear plan to deal with the economy, rather than saying lots of big promises at rallies which don't necessarily lead to concrete action in power.
Yeah, and it is still just sort of talking and defending himself rather than sort of coming up with a big idea or a plan as to what to do. He did at least have that when he ran for the presidency. Not that it was a very good idea, but and the state the economy is in now, arguably, is partly due to Trump because he was in power not that long ago. But what do you think, everybody? Do you think Trump's got a chance at the next US general election? Do you think he's going to win? Do you think he's actually going to manage to stomp Joe Biden this time? Or do you think he's going to lose again? Big. Mike says, supporting someone found in court to be a sexual predator isn't likely to help the GOP chances in 2024. Die-hard Trump fans will vote for him, but moderate Republicans will stay away in droves. This is the thing, isn't it? You've got the Trump base, the working class, the Rust Belt towns who voted for Trump in big numbers in 2016. And his narrative of being persecuted works for them because they feel persecuted. They feel the system's out to get them too. So it works for them and that his base is still there. But how does it work for, the soccer mums aged 33 to 49? In the Midwest? How does it work to perhaps Democrat voters who might not like Joe Biden or Kamala Harris and might, in other circumstances, vote for the other guy in order to get rid of them? It's not necessarily completely in the bag, is it, John? Even though from our effete British view, perhaps it's all a bit crazy what those colonials are up to. It's still not even, in their terms and in that country, it's not just because Trump is popular with Trumpkins doesn't mean he's going to walk it again.
Yeah, and even though it does seem at the moment that he has got this momentum that cannot be stopped, that things like this don't seem to get in any way in his way, there are many stages to getting back into the White House. So you've got to first win over Republicans and get that nomination to be on the ticket. And then you've obviously got to fight that election against Joe Biden. We know that Joe Biden has had some issues himself in his presidency. There's lots of questions in America about his age. He would be in I think it's his mid-80s if he did stay on.
Yeah, Biden would be 81, I think, if he stayed on.
Right. And so he would be, 81 at the start, 81.
81 or 83. I think it'd be 81 at the time of the election.
Right. So he would be 86 at the end of his time, or 85, as I can do my maths, at the end of his time as president. And so there are questions about, is Joe Biden the right person to be on the Democratic ticket? He is going to be their candidate for the election. So it's going to be a tricky one. Who knows? Who knows what stumbles that Joe Biden might have between then and now? Remember when Hillary Clinton was running and there was that moment when she had pneumonia or something. She had a bit of a collapse, didn't she, near a car? She had a bit of a stumble at some September the 11th memorial event, and that seemed to make big headlines, and that raised big questions about whether she was healthy enough to be president. And so, yeah, who knows what might happen in the next few months on the campaign trail with Joe Biden or with Donald Trump.
No, it's all got to be played for. It's got to be said. Now, what do you think, everybody? As Strauss says, politics is not about any policies; it's about optics. That's what Trump gets, and Boris tried to replicate. Culture wars start to play a massive role in controlling those optics. I suppose if Trump moves on to some of the culture wars, then he may be playing that game, Strauss. I know he does play some of it anyway, but at the moment he seems to put himself at the centre of a culture war, and it's his bit of America against everyone else's bit of America. And of course, his bit of America, his base, doesn't really work out that he's not of there. He is the elite, and he's busy telling them that the elite's the problem. But I suppose, like Mike Pence was saying, John, just some people it doesn't matter in the States. This is. The economy matters more than the character of the guy in charge to some people. Well, I just like to have a little word, if I might, with America. As a Brit, someone who's just had someone a bit like this running our country, it does make a difference. It sets the tone. It creates a moral vacuum at the heart of power. And it means that when things come to a crunch, and things are always going to come to a crunch when you're running a country, the person who has to make the really tough calls in a split second either cannot make the right call or someone around them is having to do it for them. And that means you're not being governed by the person you elected. You're being governed by either the madman's whims or by an unelected official of some sort. And that is not democracy. That is not what America was supposed to be about. That's a dictatorship. And you want to throw in the fact that he's already watched his supporters storm the Capitol. I mean, do you really think he's going to stop there, America? I doubt it. No, he would not. He's going to carry on, isn't he? But I suppose the real doozy here, John, is, that whether someone who is a sex pig, who is going to be 78 by then, by the time of the election, is going to be taking on a non-sex pig of 81 by then, and each of them are going to be arguing that the other one's a bit senile, because Biden has his gaffes and his dentures seem to keep slipping out, and Trump, who said that E Jean Carroll wasn't his type and he didn't recognise her at all, during the case he was shown a photograph of her at the time of the assaults, and he mistook her for his second wife, Marla Maples. So, John, I mean, the first Trump run at the White House was exciting for all the wrong reasons. Is the next one going to be a bit dull for all the wrong reasons too? A couple of old men who can't quite remember what's what.
I don't know. I think that anything involving Donald Trump, he's one of those people who kind of draws all the oxygen. He is, for like good or bad, he is someone who grabs attention. He's someone who's interesting. He is slightly unpredictable, although in many ways he is predictable. But some things you're like, well, that's no surprise that Donald Trump's done it, or that's no surprise. It's the way he's responded. But remember back to those presidential debates between him and Hillary Clinton, when he was stalking her around the stage, and it was all a bit strange. I don't know. I think anything with Donald Trump is fairly interesting, and him versus Joe Biden, I think, would be quite an interesting fight, and no doubt would get quite scrappy.
Yeah, I wonder if they're probably both going to get injected with vitamins before they go on the stage for the presidential debates. Strange business they have in America, isn't it? Funny lot. It's because they stopped drinking tea and started on the coffee. It's a terrible idea all the way around. Right. Thank you for that, John. Thank you, everyone, for taking part.